My wife was 8 months pregnant and home alone when Karen let herself in. Not knocked. Not rang the bell. She unlocked the front door and walked in like she paid the mortgage. My wife screamed. Karen screamed back. By the time I got the call, my brother, who happens to be a litigator with rage issues, was already en route. The whole thing started because of paint. Not lead paint or toxic paint or even offensive paint. Just a soft lavender that apparently violated subsection 12.3 of the HOA color compliance guidelines. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name's Brad Kessler, quiet guy, freelance graphic designer, mind my own business type. I moved to Maple Ridge Estates in hopes of starting a peaceful chapter with my wife, Callie, and our soon-to-arrive daughter. The neighborhood looked perfect when we toured it. Manicured lawns, friendly waves, kids on bikes. What the realtor didn't mention was Marsha Klingel, the HOA president, community menace, and woman who thinks common areas include your foyer if she has a master key. Marsha ran the HOA like her personal kingdom, complete with daily patrols in her golf cart that she decorated with magnetic HOA logos and a horn that played the first 3 notes of Beethoven's Fifth. Marsha had beef with us ever since Callie painted the nursery a color not on the HOA-approved palette. The lavender was .02 shades off from approved color number 47, Gentle Mist. She began citing us for nonsense violations that got progressively more creative. First came the unregistered curtain aesthetic citation, which apparently meant our living room curtains were too cheerful for the neighborhood aesthetic. Then we got written up for suspicious porch scent because Callie had planted jasmine. The most bizarre was when she cited us for having a backyard that, and I quote, feels secretive. She winked as she handed out notices, like we were playing some passive-aggressive poker game where only she knew the rules. The harassment escalated when we refused to repaint the nursery. She installed a camera on the community lamppost that just happened to point directly at our mailbox, claiming it was for package theft prevention. Then came the drone that would hover over our backyard during dinner, which she insisted was for gutter inspection services. The final straw was when she knocked on our door at 7 a.m. on a Saturday and asked to inspect the nursery to verify we hadn't made any additional non-compliant color choices. We said no. She said she'd be back with proper documentation. We thought that meant more paperwork. We were wrong. The day of the break-in, I was at the store buying diapers for the hospital bag. Callie was home organizing baby clothes when she heard the front door unlock. Not a knock, not the doorbell, but the actual deadbolt turning. Marsha used a universal HOA-issued master key, unlocked our front door, and walked in like she owned the place. Her excuse when Callie found her standing in our living room with a color wheel and a clipboard was that she was verifying compliance with window tinting ordinances. My 8 months pregnant wife screamed loud enough for 3 neighbors to hear. Marsha claimed she was the one startled and that Callie's reaction was unnecessarily dramatic and potentially violated noise ordinances. Callie called 911 while Marsha stood there lecturing about implied consent through HOA membership. The dispatcher could hear Marsha in the background citing bylaws while my wife sobbed. Police were called. But before they arrived, my brother David, a bulldog attorney with a resting lawsuit face and zero tolerance for idiots, showed up. Callie had called him right after calling the police, and he'd broken every speed limit getting there. Marsha started monologuing about bylaws and her authority as HOA president. David started recording on his phone while calmly asking her to repeat everything she'd just said about having universal access to all homes. David filed for a restraining order that afternoon. While Marsha was still explaining to the police officers why she technically hadn't committed breaking and entering, David was already on the phone with 3 other attorneys from his firm. He discovered the HOA board had been illegally distributing master keys to board members, a major liability that violated state law and multiple insurance policies. Within 72 hours, he had subpoenaed the HOA's security contractor, exposed their lack of proper insurance coverage, and identified 6 other incidents where Marsha had entered homes without permission. The security contractor folded immediately, admitting Marsha had pressured them into making copies of master keys against their recommendations. David started compiling a class action with 3 other furious neighbors who came forward with their own stories. One elderly couple revealed Marsha had entered while they were on vacation to rearrange their furniture for better feng shui. Another neighbor had security footage of her entering to leave compliance notices on their kitchen counter instead of mailing them. Marsha tried to issue fines to everyone involved for what she called weaponized legalism. That's not a thing. She made it up and printed it on official-looking letterhead she'd designed herself. David's investigation uncovered something even worse. Marsha had been making unilateral decisions for 2 years, forging board member signatures on official documents. She'd approved vendor contracts with her cousin's landscaping company at inflated rates. She'd used HOA emergency funds to purchase a wine refrigerator for the community center that was somehow always locked in a storage room only she could access. The other board members claimed they thought she was just very organized and didn't need their input. David called it criminal negligence at best, conspiracy to commit fraud at worst. Under pressure from David's firm and facing potential criminal charges, the HOA board held an emergency meeting. 17 homeowners showed up with complaints. Marsha tried to declare the meeting invalid because it wasn't announced 30 days in advance. The board overruled her for the first time in 2 years. She then tried to cite Robert's Rules of Order, but she'd been making up her own version of those too. The vote to remove her was unanimous, even from her supposed allies. She was removed, sued by the HOA's insurance company for liability damages, and banned from holding any fiduciary position in the state after the Attorney General's office got involved. The Master Key program was destroyed in what became a neighborhood celebration. They literally had a locksmith throw the keys into a wood chipper while everyone watched and applauded. Marsha stood on the sidewalk taking photos and screaming about destruction of HOA property, but she wasn't allowed within 50 feet of any board member due to the restraining orders. The new board sent everyone new locks as an apology, at Marsha's expense once the civil suit settled. She tried to pay the settlement in pennies. The court was not amused. The criminal trial was swift but thorough. Breaking and entering, criminal trespass, fraud, and embezzlement charges piled up like the violations she used to hand out. The prosecutor, a young woman who'd clearly dealt with entitled defendants before, methodically presented each piece of evidence. Security footage from 6 different homes showed Marsha entering without permission. Her own detailed logs, which she'd kept in color-coded binders with tabs for each household, documented 312 unauthorized entries over 3 years. She'd even rated each home's compliance on a scale she'd invented, with notes like needs immediate intervention and suspected nonconformist tendencies. Marsha's defense that she had implied authority fell apart when the prosecutor pointed out that even actual authority wouldn't permit warrantless entry into private homes. Her attorney, clearly exhausted by his client, tried arguing that the HOA bylaws created a special relationship between the board and homeowners. The judge asked him to point to any law supporting this theory. He couldn't. Marsha kept trying to whisper suggestions to him, violating courtroom protocol repeatedly. At one point, she stood up and declared she wanted to represent herself. The judge denied this request, calling it a transparent delay tactic. Her own meticulously kept records became the prosecution's best evidence, showing a pattern of harassment and illegal entry spanning 3 years. She documented everything, including her personal opinions about homeowners' character flaws and their likelihood of compliance. One entry about us read, "The Kesslers showed dangerous independent thinking and must be brought into line before others follow their example." The prosecutor read this aloud twice, letting it sink in with the jury. Marsha tried to explain it was taken out of context. Nobody asked for context. The judge, who happened to live in an HOA community himself, showed no sympathy for her tears about just trying to maintain property values. He specifically addressed her claim that she was protecting the community, stating that vigilante enforcement of aesthetic preferences through criminal trespass was not neighborhood watch, it was stalking with a clipboard. He noted that she'd shown no remorse, only indignation at being questioned. Even during sentencing, she interrupted twice to correct the court reporter's spelling of HOA terminology. Marsha was sentenced to 18 months in prison, 3 years probation, and ordered to pay $47,000 in restitution to various homeowners. The $47,000 included $25,000 in punitive damages specifically for entering homes with pregnant women, elderly residents, and children present. She fainted when the judge read the sentence, then tried to cite him for causing emotional distress in a courtroom setting. That got her an extra 3 months for contempt. As the bailiff helped her stand, she asked him if the prison had an HOA she could join.